Well, let's continue. Last time we have seen how to calculate the value of education using Excel, basically. Basically, we have reviewed the factors that will affect the value of education. But we might also show how they affect. And the beauty of this type of a framework is actually you can use since the where data is taken is already fixed, you can try different things. For example, you might decrease the income without education. As you see, this has increased the value of education to $82,000. Let's keep this at $10,000 and let's increase this to $100,000. Median was the median of all people, so actually, if we look the median of the education people with education, the number might change. Well, in that case, this might be the case. The value of education has increased over $123,000. Let's keep this difference, which is a huge difference, but play with the interest rate. If the interest rate increases 0.9, well, suddenly even this huge difference doesn't help. The value of education has decreased to negative. Negative means even if the education is free, now this person won't get the education. Not because the person is less skillful, actually, compared with the first guy. This guy is more skillful since he's able to get higher money, which might also mean he or she has connections. But also the interest rate of this guy is high, because this guy might not basically care for the income increase in future. He might want income now. Spend income now, but it might also this might also be because the guy is less wealthy, and because the guy has emergency spending, spent his or her money for some emergency needs. Basically, the interest rate is a factor which is an important factor which also changes the value of education. So, let's move this to 0.5, a middle ground. For example, if education is $20,000, value of education, in that case, when we fix the income with and without education, the people with interest rate 0.5 will get this education since the value not get the education actually. Will not get the education since the value of education is less than the cost of education. However, if we decrease the interest rate a little bit more to 0.4, now the person, the guy with the interest rate 0.4 will take the education. So the price of education will block people with high interest rate. It might also block people. It might also prevent people with relatively low potential return also to get education, because for them the value of education will be less because they are expected to earn less when they get the education. It might also prevent people who have relatively high income without education to get the education, basically. So when education is free, even in that case, certain people will evaluate, and they will basically decide to take or not take the education. And again, all factors are in play there also: the income with education, without education, and interest rate. But when education is actually the education actually is not free, in that case, that the value of education needs to be higher than the cost of education, so that for the person that education is worth taking. Of course, we are assuming that cost is also paid immediately for in bulk at the very beginning of the education. If that $20,000 is taken at the beginning of every year in 4 different parts, in that case, again, we should, because I mean, just like the money you earn, the money you will give 1 year later is also less valuable for you. So actually, the value of the money the person will give in 4 years in different intervals will be less than $20,000 if the actual sum of that money is $20,000, as long as the person has an interest rate. I hope I have shown the basics of the model. So the model basically tells us each person will compare the value of future incomes with and without education. The value of future income with education, if the value of future income is higher with education is higher than compared with the value of income without education, we are not talking of actual sums. We are talking about the value of those sums. I mean, for that we need to make the calculation you have seen in the exam. So, if the value of education, her future income with education is higher compared with the value of her income without education, the person will get that education. If education is free. And if education is not free, the value should be higher than the cost of the education. If for the income she earns 1 year later is more valuable than the income she earns 2 years later, the value she gives to her future income stream, which provides her low wage in near future and high wage in the far future, typically falls down. So this basically says, in a very complex case, actually I could erase this one. If that person is evaluating the income he earns 1 year later, since the guy is not able to earn income immediately, compared with the income she will earn 2 years later, basically in that case the person is valuing the income that could be earned immediately more. So that for that guy, income stream, an option which provides her low wage first and high wage level later, will have less worth compared with a person who values the future income relatively more. So that's one factor. The other factor is if she is expected to get more benefit from the education because has more skills. In that case, value of education will be high. If she has some skills, maybe that allows her to get a higher wage without education, with high school degree. In that case, value of education also goes down. So if she has more skills that allows her to gain a higher income with college education, then the value of education goes up. I think all of these are straightforward things, actually. Again, this is also, we have seen this. We already talked on the wealth and skills, actually. The wealth is a factor, and the skills are a factor. And basically, when you have an education that is costly, it might actually allow let's say the people without skills to not get education and make education maybe more efficient, but it might also allow the people with high skills but low wealth level out of the education. It might keep them out of the education because for them the interest rate might be high. I mean, they cannot just afford the education means is the regular thing to say. But if we translate it to economics, for them, just the money they will earn now or the money they would give to the education is too valuable, even if they have that money, because without that money they might stay hungry or their families might stay hungry. Or maybe some medical expenses are not bad if they give that money to the college. Wage difference is an important factor. That's at social level, especially. Well, that's actually an interesting case. Wage difference and the value of education, actually cost of education, especially value of education has, well, not the value of education specifically, but cost of education have two-side relation. So if wage difference between high school high school graduates and college graduates is low, in that case, well, the value of education will fall because it doesn't bring any additional income to the person, and that's what the person cares in our analysis. In that case, you cannot make that person pay a lot of money to get that education if the university is actually a private university, from which basically the student buys the education. But in that case also, since the cost you need to pay for education is low, many people will have access to the education. So since more people have access to the education, well, relative number of people who get the education might be high, because I mean the money that needs to be paid is low. So that access of education itself might keep the wage level low, because whenever wage level increases a little bit, more people might start to get education, and that might decrease the wages back down. And since everybody can act when the wages rises, that mechanism might be relatively faster, even though it might still take years, because I mean education takes years, of course. However, if the wage difference increases, and as a result, the cost of education also increases, the private companies basically increase the cost of education. In that case, education might not be achievable for even skilled but people with low wealth level. As a result, when the wage level is high, people who can act and get that education might not be that numerous anymore. Well, there might be some options like getting debt to get the education, but still, even getting that debt might be not that easy for some people. And for some people, that debt and the interest they will pay for that debt in future might also be another factor that discourage them. So basically, whenever you have a profession with high wage level, to some extent it might be because the education increases the skills a lot, and basically that's why basically people are paying more for the people with that skill. But it might also, and not many people might have the skills to get that education at first when wages increase, and that might also keep the supply of people with that skill at relatively low level. But it might also be possible that because the cost of that particular education is high, not many people might afford that cost, and basically that might itself maybe keeping the supply low. So here we have two different things. I mean, are wages high because cost of education is high, or is cost of education high because the wage difference is high? Anyway, let's stop here. Let's continue in the next part.